This video is part 2 and covers mostly the second season of Steven Universe. If you want to hear about season 1 and the show's backstory, please start from part 1. A link is in the description. Spoilers galore for Steven Universe up ahead. Go with caution! At this very pivotal point in the show, let's talk a little bit about Connie. Connie is a human that Steven met when he was still mostly raised by his father, but she didn't really interact with him back then. He noticed her in a parade, was immediately smitten with her, and she lost a glow stick bracelet. And he just picked it up and put it in a freezer, hoping he was going to meet this cute girl again one day. And he did. And he immediately wanted to be friends with her. And the thing with Connie is she started out very shy, very withdrawn, because she has a very overbearing mother, a soccer mom, if you so will. And that's always kept her from making a lot of friends. Also, her family has always moved around a lot, so she was a bit withdrawn. The thing is, Connie is also a huge fan of action shows and of fantasy books. So while she's immediately a little bit scared by all the weird things happening around Steven, literally the first thing that happens is that he accidentally gets them trapped in a bubble at the bottom of the ocean. And she thinks she's gonna die there, but they manage to escape. She's also very fascinated with him right away, because this is this kind of adventure life that she's been dreaming of all her life, while being just forced to study and play tennis and play the violin and nothing else. And she just loves hanging out with him, even though her parents are very against it. And they form a very close bond, which eventually becomes close enough for Steven to actually end up fusing with her, which is only possible because of his organic body, because usually fusion requires the body that is controlled by the gem to be compatible with the other being. So usually cross-species fusion is impossible. But Steven is an exception. So they end up turning into this beautiful person of undetermined gender, who's just so beautiful and alluring that everybody immediately falls in love with them. But they are also incredibly uncomfortable with that. And a lot of, they get very close to it, and they use that form to battle a lot, but this is also how Steven earns the only person in the world that he hates, because usually Steven loves everyone. But there's one guy who hits on him and Connie while they are fused. His name is Kevin. And he develops such a deep loathing for Kevin that it's unreal to see Steven this hateful towards someone. Usually he never does that, and this comes back later. Anyway, Connie becomes more and more involved in Steven's adventures, especially when Steven accidentally heals her eyesight. And at first she is so terrified by this that she takes to wearing fake glasses so that her mother won't find out, because she doesn't know how to explain it to her mother. But after a while she begins to be more open to these things, because she's just so allured by it. Another thing is Steven is always very protective of Connie, and when they get back from the kidnapping, this is when Steven for the first time really realizes how dangerous his life is. And he gets, for the first time, extremely scared of putting Connie into danger. And he tries to break up the friendship with her, because he's just terrified of accidentally getting her killed.
I saw that episode.
Yeah, you might have. She, of course, doesn't let him do that, and they patch up quickly. Another thing that happens is that Lapis Lazuli, extremely fed up with just being treated like a prisoner all the time, and with all of the depression and anxiety issues you can imagine, decides to take action for once. So when Jasper tries to use Lapis Lazuli as a power-up item, basically, to become strong enough to beat Garnet, who, because of a fusion, is physically stronger than Jasper is, and rescue the mission after their ship was already crashed, Lapis decides to pretend to go along with what Jasper is doing. Then she takes control of the fusion and traps herself with Jasper at the bottom of the ocean, fused into the body of a very monstrous looking fusion called Malachite. And she uses all of her mental strength to prevent Malachite from leaving the bottom of the ocean for the next few months. So not only does Steven have to worry about Connie possibly getting killed in his adventures, he also has a friend, because he's very close to Lapis by that point, at the bottom of the ocean and has her suffering. At the same time, Stephen starts to develop some new powers. Specifically, he starts to develop telepathy.
Sorry, before we go on with that, let me catch up with some questions.
Okay.
When rose quartz or diamond, big diamond, first arrives on Earth, how long ago is this?
6,000 years from the present.
Wow. How did Earth look back then?
Well, there were some stray human civilizations, but it is generally assumed that Earth's history was the same as it was in our world up to this point, 6,000 years ago, and then the Gems started terraforming, and as a result of that, there's actually some geological differences in how the Steven Universe world map looks. For example, there's a huge chunk of Africa is instead a part of South America. There's a huge ocean in the middle of Russia. Florida is an island.
Okay.
So, but a lot of people complain that even though there's all these geographical differences and clearly gems have influenced humankind, like there seem to be different religions around than from the ones that we know, technology is still all the same as in our world. Which, like, of course, the show is not trying to be like it's science fantasy and not science fiction, so it's not trying to be super realistic. But it's still kind of funny when you have a world where Russia is 50% ocean, and yet the Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker still exists.
Yeah. Second question: when the gems from the home planet, they essentially nuked Earth, right?
Yes.
How did humans survive?
Well, the nuke that they dropped was actually, it was a weapon that only targets gems. That the plan was actually to just kill Rose Quartz, who they thought murdered their sister. And they just, the collateral damage that they took, that was worth for them, you know? They just ended up destroying, like, the rebels and everybody else who failed to evacuate. But the problem is, it's not explained yet why, but the nuke, instead of turning the gems into lifeless crystals that what it was supposed to do is just turn all gems into lifeless crystals that are just normal stones. But instead, what happened was that they all went insane. And that hasn't been explained yet. It's very close to being explained, I think. That even Blue and Yellow Diamond were surprised to see that when they came back to Earth, but that's like a little bit later on.
Okay. Didn't this affect the environment at all? Like, I think you said it made a bunch of dust or something?
Yeah, the thing is, like, there's two places that they turned into kindergartens, with kindergartens being where they mine and incubate new gems. And both of those sites are like deserts now. Like, one is a canyon where absolutely nothing can grow, and it's just stone and rock and nothing else. And the other one is like an actual desert now. Wouldn't
that harm humans in some way, I would think?
It would, but the thing is, like, Rose Quartz actually disrupted the development of gem sites before it came so far that human population was actually affected. Because, as I said, they only managed to complete like 5% of their plan, is what Peridot says later on. So 95% of the planet were left untouched.
Okay, so it didn't actually affect human development that much, I see.
It did affect a few things, like there's a lot of ruins left over on the planet where humans have been and have cartographied, but they don't understand them. But yeah, that's it pretty much.
Okay. And my last question is, I think it's shown at some point that Steven has like a gem on his body, right?
Yeah. That's as I said, gems are basically just the gem itself is the gemstone. The gemstone is what the gem really is. The body is usually just a hard light construct protected by the gem.
Okay.
So they are living rocks. But the thing is, like, Steven is basically, what Steven is a human body which has a gem embedded into it. And he acts in that way, he acts as a reincarnation of his mother, because while his human brain does the thinking, a lot of his life force and a lot of his power comes from the gem. Like, for example, he doesn't need as much oxygen or as much water or food as other humans do, because his gem can provide for him for a certain time. It can't keep his organic body alive forever, but it provides for him for a certain time. And the staff of the show has also said that if the gem were removed from his body, he would die.
Okay. I thought maybe that would Pink Diamond kinda infused herself into that gem or something, that maybe she could
She is that gem. She is that gem.
Yeah, so I thought maybe she wanted to be reborn as a human to kind of experience what it's like to be a human. That's her reasoning for being reincarnated in that way.
That is what is the implication right now. Actually, yes. It's kind of funny because Stephen. Okay, this is like going a little bit forward, but like at the current point in the show, Stephen is actually so bitter at his mother that he's actually considered that maybe she just created him as a way of suicide, so she doesn't have to deal with her own responsibility and can brush it off onto somebody else. He's extremely bitter at her by now.
I would understand that. She's getting responsible in that way.
Yeah. The next thing that happens, like, after they return to Earth and Stephen realizes the seriousness of the situation and that he basically lives in the legacy of a person who might cause another invasion of Earth at any point, they are doing two things immediately. First of all, they try to trace down Peridot, who has escaped in a pod, like when they were still in orbit, and has been missing ever since, and they don't want her to contact Homeworld and cause an invasion. So they try to catch her before she gets a way of contacting anybody. And the other thing they do is find malachite, the fusion of lapis lazuli and jasper at the bottom of the ocean. While they do so, Stephen develops more of his powers, and he ends up realizing that he has telepathy. And his telepathy is pretty damn strong. Like, in the beginning, he can only communicate with people through their sleep. While sleeping, he can, like, infuse himself into the mind of others and talk with them. But later down the line, this power will get stronger, and he's actually able to take over the bodies of other beings, no matter if human or gem or whatever. So he's very powerful in that way. Like, his telepathy is probably his most powerful power.
So he can actually, like, control your actions.
Yes, but the thing is, like, as far as we know right now, he can't control his own body while using his telepathy, so he's basically out of commission while using it, and somebody needs to protect his body, otherwise he's a sitting duck.
So it's like he transfers his consciousness into someone else?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Or someplace else. It doesn't even have to be into a specific person. He can just remove his soul from his body for a short while too.
Okay, I see.
What happens is they try to track down Malachite, but all they manage to do is, like, he takes contact with Lapis, but Lapis is like, no, screw that, I want to suppress Jasper forever, leave me alone, you're just distracting me, go away, let me do this for you. She explains it like she's protecting Stephen from Jasper, even though everybody knows she can't do this forever. Meanwhile, they chase down Peridot, and Peridot gets continuously more frantic. She uses her weapons and technology to protect herself, to find different ways to contact her superiors. Finally, she kidnaps Stephen and is like, I know you can heal stuff. Can you repair the galaxy warp for me? It's not working. And it doesn't work, of course. And, like, she just breaks down crying there, thinking that she's going to die. And Stephen is like, why do you think you're going to die? And she starts trying to tell him why she thinks she's going to die. Except then Garnet comes in and destroys her physical form, reducing her down to her gem and imprisoning her in a bubble. But Stephen knows Peridot was about to tell him something important. Of course, nobody listens to Stephen because he's the baby, and nobody ever listens to Stephen, even when he's right. But he knows she had important information, and he's not taking any chances. So he goes down to where Garnet holds all the imprisoned monsters. He finds Peridot, frees her. Peridot is immediately shocked because they destroyed all her weapons, including the... She used sort of a robot suit to be taller, and now without it she's only as tall as Stephen. And she's, like, embarrassed by it and very, very frustrated. She begins by just slapping him in the face with frustration because she's so angry at everything. It's kind of really cute. Anyway, Stephen manages to win her trust. He manages to, he teaches her a little bit about, like, Earth and so, and she actually starts to grow a little fascinated with it. Before she was not very happy with Earth, but then she, like, seeing stuff like rain, and so she's naturally curious because of her gem type. Because, as I said, peridots are created to gain a lot of information, calculate and process a lot of information, and retain a lot of information. So seeing all the stuff that she's never seen before, it just gives her an information overflow like she's never had, and she gets kind of a high on it that actually allows her to be actually happy for the first time in her life, because before it was all just do your job, you know?
Yeah, for the army, for the empire.
Exactly. So Peridot ends up telling Stephen what she was so afraid of, and they reveal that, like, before the diamonds left Earth and nuked it from orbit, they put, like, basically gem shards are like corpses in this universe, because when a gem is broken, then its consciousness is shattered as well. So you only have, like, these partial ghosts, like zombies, zombie limbs, desperately trying to reunite with the rest of their soul, but not managing. What the Diamonds did is, like, they took a whole bunch of those gem shards, like several billions of the ones that they killed in the war, and tossed them into a hole somewhere in America, and put a lot of pressure on them, a lot of dirt and pressure, so that they would incubate together, like incubating a new gem, except it would be like this huge monstrosity made up of the shattered souls of a gigantic amount of fallen soldiers. They were trying like to create like this
big mix of corpses.
Yeah, exactly. They were trying to create this invincible zombie soldier that they could use to for their conquest, and it was like the final spiteful goodbye to the planet. This was how they were going to absolutely destroy the planet, by just having this gigantic monstrosity incubate in it, and then at the end of it they'd have like a mindless zombie slave that they could sick at other planets, and they would never have to think of Earth again.
I guess the Gem Empire really isn't big on ethics.
Yes. The next thing that happens is Peridot is like, the cluster, as they call it, is about to emerge, and when it does, the Earth is going to break apart, there will be no more Earth, and we are all going to die. Of course, nobody wants to die, so they come up with a plan. So basically, Peridot helps them build a drill that they can use to get down to the cluster and possibly destroy it, even though she's kind of foggy on the details. She just hopes it's going to work because she doesn't want to die.
Yeah.
So Peridot has to start to learn to work together with the crystal gems, and at first it's hard for her because they are all outcasts from what is considered the norm on Gem homeworld. Like, she acts like a homophobe towards Garnet. Like, she's like, stop being fused. It makes me very uncomfortable. And she tries to order around Pearl, even though Pearl is a senior to her, just because Pearl is a Pearl. And as I said, they are the handmaidens. She actually tries to be nice to Amethyst, because Amethyst is a quartz, and quartz, as I said, are like these elite soldiers. But then she's like, oh, by the way, you are also way too small for your breed of gem, because you stayed too long in your hole too long. So you're defective. Yeah. And of course this gives Amethyst always, he has all sorts of issues by that point, like, because she grew up constantly hearing about how terrible the kindergarten was for Earth and how much it destroyed the planet. So she grew up just feeling like she was trash, and like everybody hated her for being born. So
she was a mistake.
Yeah, and then hearing from Peridot, oh, and you didn't even come out right, didn't make it better.
Yeah.
So Peridot starts out by fighting with everyone on the team, and also tossing Steve's father off a window to test if he can fly, because she didn't know. She saw a ladybird fly and was like, can humans do that too? Let's try. She has a lot to learn, but eventually, like, she realizes, okay, they actually make it.
What happened to Greg? Like, was he okay?
Yes, Garnet saved him.
Oh, okay.
She also apologized on Peridot's behalf. So Peridot slowly realizes, okay, they are all trying to be nice to me, they are all trying to accept me as one of their own, so I should at least try to make an effort, not be an asshole, and just see how the culture works here. Also, humans have fun entertainment, I guess, so she really ends up liking human entertainment. She becomes like this huge fan of trash art and of especially like Canadian sitcoms. No, soap operas, Canadian soap operas. She becomes very obsessed with Canadian soap operas. She even draws like this intricate shipping chart, even before she knows what shipping really is, because she calls this battle formation, but only after Garnet explains to her what like a couple is. She starts realizing, oh, that's a couple! So it's like...
For her, it's like these people are fighting each other or something.
The perfect battle formation.
Yes.
She starts to realize it though, and she ends up having a lot of fun. And eventually, they go to the moon base, and that is like Pink Diamond's moon base, in order to figure out the exact location of the cluster, because it should still be in the files up there. And while they're on the moon base, Peridot explains to them what the original plan for Earth was. She shows them a simulation that is still in the files, and she shows so much enthusiasm at the simulation, like, this would have been a very good colony, and Rose Quartz just stopped it. I don't get you guys. This would have been great. And everybody gets extremely angry at her because they feel like she doesn't understand anything. Because she's still like, but the Empire! And they're like, but the planet! Because when you see the animation, it's actually very scary, because it's like the entire planet hollowed out on just a shell with nothing but buildings on it. So what happens is Peridot ends up taking a communicator device with her from the space station, from the moon base, and Stephen witnesses her, and Stephen gets extremely angry when he sees this, and he tries to back Peridot against the wall and question her. But Peridot just escapes and makes contact with Yellow Diamond using the communicator device. Everybody thinks that she's going to betray them to the diamonds. However, that's not what she's doing. Like, they observe her from a distance, and they realize what she's actually doing is she has a completely different plan. She starts talking to Yellow Diamond and is like, my diamond, there's a lot of resources on this planet, and the ecosystem here is unique. We could have renewable resources here that we could never get on any other world. We should use this. But Yellow Diamond is just like, I am not interested in what a Peridot has to say. I want this cluster. You are to shut up and do as you're told. And when Peridot hears this, because Peridot is very, as I said, she's a very logical person, and she likes efficiency a lot. And when she hears this, she just freaks out and yells at Yellow Diamond. And she calls her, like, she swears at her. She uses a swear that she only ever used for enemies before that, which is Claude. It sounds hilarious, but apparently it's a very heavy swear in the German language.
I see.
And she just yells at her, and and then when she realizes, oh my god, I just yelled at the supreme overlord of my caste. She cuts the connection and rolls up on the ball on the floor and is like, well, I guess I'm one of you now. Also, somebody throw away the communicator because she can't blow it up remotely. So this is how Peridot joins the team. And so Peridot helps them actually getting to the cluster, because obviously trying to reason with the diamonds wasn't helpful. Meanwhile, while that is happening, Stephen celebrates his 14th birthday. To which Connie is invited, and Connie is like extremely shocked when she hears how old Stephen is, because he's shorter than her. And then she realizes, wait, I've known him for 2 years now, and he has never physically changed in those 2 years. So she talks with his father and realizes it's apparently his aging process stopped when he was 8.
Oof.
And
so he looks like an 8-year-old?
Yes, and he might look like an 8-year-old for the rest of his life. And Stephen was not really aware of that as much before, but when he overhears his father and Connie talk about it, he gets very disturbed about it, because he does have feelings for Connie. He even says that. And he wants to be with her, but if he's going to look like a little kid for all his life and she's going to grow up, he might like never have a life with her together. So he actually has this brilliant idea of trying to use shapeshifting to change his age. The problem is shapeshifting consumes a lot of energy, and he ends up overexerting his gems so much that his entire body collapses back into a baby shape.
Oh god.
He recovers quickly, but they eventually decide, let's hope I start aging naturally eventually. Like, he does grow some facial hair eventually, but not much. So they just hope that his aging process is going to start up again, and Connie says she's just going to accept him how he is, even if he never starts aging again.
Oh.
Then, while that is happening, finally...
They have an ideal battle formation together.
They do! That's the thing, Stevonnie is incredibly powerful, especially after Connie ends up learning how to sword fight from Pearl, because she doesn't want to just be a bystander, she doesn't want to just look...
No, you don't understand. This is a Canadian sitcom with battle formations.
That is how Peridot would put it, I guess.
Yes.
But yeah, basically Connie wants to get more involved, so she becomes a master swordswoman, actually. And
nice.
Since Stephen is more of a passive fighter, like he uses his shield and he heals, when the two of them go together, they are actually extremely powerful. Because Stephen's half of the brain takes care of the blocking and everything, while Connie is fully focused on the offense, and they actually defeat quite a few enemies like this. I think that it's extremely rare that Stevonnie, as their fusion is called, loses any battles. Also, they finally end up convincing Connie's mother that Connie is not going to die from hanging out with Stephen. Stephen is maybe dangerous, but Connie can take care of herself. It's very funny because they need to save Connie's mother from sort of a gem zombie, it's a mini cluster, an experimental cluster that ended up in the hospital where Connie's mother works as a surgeon because somebody mistook it for a wounded body and brought it there, and it ends up trying to kill them all. And when Connie's mother sees how skilled she's actually is with that sword, she's finally chills the fuck out and is like, okay, I guess you can take care of yourself. Just don't get yourself killed, please. Meanwhile, Stephen starts developing really big issues about his mother because he's never met her, and he sees all these other humans interacting with their mothers, and he starts imagining what it would be like to have a mother his own, because he does have the gems, but it's not the same, you know?
Yeah.
He has his father, he loves his father, but yeah.